Hello, I'm here today with Ammi Burke, and as you may know, this week a judgment was handed down in her case which challenged the dismissal of her unfair dismissals case against Arthur Cox in the WRC. Now, there has been intense interest in this case right across the country, and this interest has been sustained across a long period of time. But the sad reality is that there has been a total suppression of the facts of the matter, of the facts of the case, both from the media and from the judgments that are being handed down by the judges, and in this case, one particular judge. So we felt it's important just to make this video today to explain to you, to make it clear what is being hidden and the facts that need to be told and need to be clear to everybody about this particular case, and especially the role of the media. The role of the media is really important. They have an important job to do, and sadly that job is not being done. And that's why we're here today. Now, your case originated back in 2019 when Ammi Burke was dismissed from Arthur Cox. Now, Ammi Burke was an exemplary solicitor. She had an unblemished record. Prior to joining Arthur Cox, she graduated first out of her class of 85 in her law degree. She interned and did some work with the Massachusetts Appeal Court in the United States, and started at Arthur Cox in 2016. Now in 2019, after 3.5 years of work at Arthur Cox in Dublin, Ammi was dismissed, and she was really just dumped out onto the street. It was a November evening. There was no notice given, no warning whatsoever. She was taken from her desk. She wasn't allowed to go back and pick up her belongings, and you were put out on the street on a cold winter's night.
All of my devices were disabled, and I was prevented from going back to my to my desk to retrieve even my belongings. So it was very, very a great shock.
Yes. Now, you took the case to the WRC, the Workplace Relations Commission, and that's where you go when you have an unfair dismissals case. And Kevin Bainham was the adjudication officer in that case. And rather than investigate and inquire into the circumstances of Ammi's dismissal, Kevin Bainham refused to call as witnesses the key people involved in the dismissal of Ammi Burke from Arthur Cox, and they were HR Director Ruth Dalton and partner Kevin Lynch. Now, these people were important. They were central to finding out what happened and why it happened. And also, critically, Kevin Bainham, the adjudication officer, refused to disclose critical emails that would have shown in a split second that the allegations that Arthur Cox were making against Ammi Burke were false, that lies were being told about what had happened that night. Now, these emails could be disclosed. All Kevin Bainham, the adjudication officer, had to do was just simply say, "I need the emails, please." They would have to provide them, and the truth would be there. But Bainham refused to do his job. He refused to request disclosure of those emails.
Yes, Josiah, and just to say that since just a few years back, the law was amended by the Dáil to give powers to adjudication officers to be able to subpoena witnesses and to direct the disclosure of documents. And the Dáil did this knowing that it's very important in unfair dismissal cases for an adjudication officer to have those powers. That perhaps the employer might be wishing to hide evidence or keep it under lock and key, but this power was specifically given to adjudication officers just some years ago.
Yes. So Kevin Bainham then dismissed the case, and you brought the case, his dismissal of that case, to the High Court. Now, the High Court judge who was hearing this case was Ms Justice Marguerite Bolger, and really from the beginning, Bolger was hostile, and she treated you in a derogatory manner, and it was clear from the beginning, from the very beginning, that the chances of justice being done were slim. And from the beginning, you raised multiple objections to her hearing the case and to her behaviour, and so it was no surprise really to us when she came out this week with a cost order against Ammi Burke. And we just want to run through quickly some of those objections and some of those issues that we had with Bolger.
Yes, at the first hearing in the High Court of this case before Ms Justice Marguerite Bolger, Ms Justice Marguerite Bolger said that this case was, quote, not some sort of public interest case. Now this was completely false, because my proceedings were of manifest public importance. They raised questions that are relevant to the public at large. And the first issue that was of public importance was whether the proceedings, the unfair dismissal claims at the WRC, whether those hearings are of an adversarial nature or an inquisitorial nature. That was one of the main questions that I wanted the High Court to answer in these proceedings.
Yes, and the adversarial and inquisitorial, just to explain those very simply, an adversarial hearing is one where essentially the adjudication officer or the judge involved will take a back seat, they'll sit back. It's a contest between the parties involved, and essentially what it means is that the person who wins is the person who has the biggest lawyers, the person who can marshal the most manpower on the day. And you can see immediately that this is a massive, the chairs are stacked, the deck is stacked against the ordinary man who will not have the resources, who will not have the money that the big law firms like Arthur Cox, Mason, Hayes and Curran in Dublin will be able to marshal. And on the contrary then, the inquisitorial is where the adjudication officer, and this is the other system, has a duty to inquire. So they're not just sitting back, they're getting involved. They're saying, I want to inquire into the matter, I want to ask for evidence to be disclosed, I have a duty to find out what happened. And you can see immediately how that levels the playing field. That when Johnny from perhaps a farmer or some other person who doesn't have much money or is, doesn't have the means that these big law firms would have, he can be confident that the adjudication officer will get to the truth, that he doesn't need to have 100,000 euros in the bank to pay Arthur Cox to come in and defend him. And
the important thing with my proceedings was the law in Ireland is very, very clear.
Yes.
If you look at the wording of the law, the Unfair Dismissals Act, Section 8 says that the adjudication officer, quote, shall inquire into the claim.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, their primary job is to inquire, to investigate. That is their duty. It's to ask questions, to seek evidence, to call in witnesses who might want to come in.
Exactly, and the idea behind the law that says shall inquire, that this is inquisitorial, is that the WRC will be a lawyer-free zone, a place where people can come in and get to the truth, get justice without necessarily needing a lot of money and a lot of clout and big law firms. And big law, so Arthur Cox, Mason Hayes, etc., like adversarial, because it's stacked in favor of them. It means that they can suppress evidence. It means they can control what does and does not come to light in a hearing, so that adjudication officers, judges, are simply doing what they're told by people with a lot of money. And that's the sad reality. And the tragedy is that the WRC has been adversarial, has been going this way now for a long time.
Contrary to the law. And pushed on by big firms, senior counsel, barristers. The WRC is operating in a way that's contrary to the law. And litigants like myself or unrepresented have very little hope then at the WRC in such circumstances. But tied in with that big question of how the proceedings should run, it is the issue of the emails and the issue of the witnesses. If an adjudication officer carries out his role under the law, which is to inquire into the matter, then he or she will be looking for the relevant documents. Will definitely be looking to direct disclosure of critical information, and will be seeking the relevant witnesses to come in. and will be using his or her powers to subpoena. That wasn't done in my case, and I was requesting the High Court to investigate this matter and make a determination on it. So clearly matters of public importance.
Yes. Now you were upholding the law. You were saying this is an inquisitorial process, but Kevin Bainham, the adjudication officer of the WRC, he should have done those things, but he didn't. Now, Marguerite Bolger, the judge in the High Court case, said that this is not, she said, quote, "this is not some sort of public interest case. This is completely false." And when you raised that in the early days, Bolger taunted Ammi. She said, "Oh, you can go and take it up with the Court of Appeal." And again, you see this attitude that has, it's a cancer now, gone through the judiciary, where ordinary people are taunted. Go and spend another 200,000 euros to the Court of Appeal. Very few people have the resources to be able to do that, and so sadly most people don't, and injustice is allowed to prevail, and judges should not be allowed to make those kind of statements and get away with them. Now, she told you to go and take it up with the Court of Appeal. As the hearing progressed, then you made an application for Judge Bolger to recuse herself on the back of all of what we have just said, the public interest issue. Also, an extremely important fact came to light very early in the case, that Bolger was close friends with Peter Ward, senior counsel, who was arguing for the barrister for Arthur Cox. Now, both of these are employment law specialists. They're in a very close-knit group of lawyers in Ireland. They were co-founders of the Employment Law Bar Association. Both of them were former chairpersons. These people know each other well. They're close friends going back many years. And on that basis, you asked Judge Bolger, to recuse herself because there was a clear conflict of interest with Peter Ward, who's sitting in front of her, arguing for Arthur Cox. And then, just also moving on quickly, there was another revelation made in court where, and this is extraordinary, Marguerite Bolger is a judge, but before she became a judge, she was a senior counsel. And back before you took your case to the WRC, Arthur Cox tried, in an attempt to keep it out of the public eye, keep it out of the courts and out of the WRC, they tried to get you to accept something called mediation, which is kind of potentially come to an agreement under the carpet so that nobody hears about it. And the person that Arthur Cox recommended, the first person, top of the list, to do the mediation, you could really say, do the dirty work in many respects, was none other than Marguerite Bolger. And when you raise this in court, and we don't have time to go into it today, all I'll say is, and I was there in court, was that Marguerite Bolger was extremely agitated. It was an extraordinary scene. She kind of exploded in the seat, and a lot of very, very strange behavior. And again, on that basis, you were saying these people are close. They shouldn't be. She shouldn't be judging this case.
She just should not have been hearing these proceedings.
And there was one other.
Yeah, there was one final matter. Some years before Marguerite Bolger became a judge, she wrote a legal article in which she said clearly that proceedings at the WRC, quote, must be adversarial. So that's essentially a woman who's made up her mind already how she's going to decide this case. But the critical thing was, in that legal article, she referred to a case in the European Court of Human Rights. And when you look at that case, it doesn't say what Marguerite Bolger said it did. And so in essence, in writing that legal article, Marguerite Bolger twisted the case to state that it said something that it didn't say. And I raised an objection to this, but the recusal application, for all of the reasons we've discussed, it was unsuccessful. Ms Justice Marguerite Bolger refused to recuse herself.
So the trial went ahead, and on the second day then of the trial, something important happened. While the WRC were on their feet making their submissions, Marguerite Bolger announced to the court that she had printed out copies of a case on her own volition, and she began to hand them around the room to the parties. And this case was favourable to the WRC and to Arthur Cox, to the arguments that they were making. It would have helped them. And she announced that she had printed these cases, and this case was also one of the few cases, one of the only cases, in fact, that Peter Ward, senior counsel, who we've already mentioned, was relying on. Now, this is an extraordinary and unprecedented development. Judges don't do this. They don't descend into the arena. It's really important that a judge is seen to be completely unbiased, uninvolved in the cases and amongst the parties involved. That the judge was clearly taking sides, and I suppose this just reinforced your suspicions, your recusal application that you'd already made. You're seeing it now in front of you, favouring one side over the other, completely contrary to the rules of the court and to the rules of the judiciary.
I stood up and I objected, and I asked the court that the cases be taken back so that we could proceed with a fair hearing.
Fair hearing. And when you did that, then the judge actually made an order, and she said that she would take those cases back, and that would have allowed, as you said, the case to continue with some semblance, at least, of fair procedures and fair hearing. Now, at that moment, something very important happened. Peter Ward jumped to his feet, and he said these words, I quote, "We are refusing to give back this case." What he's saying is, we're refusing to obey your order. And blatant defiance. And the judge capitulated and said, okay, it's okay, I won't take them back. And the line that's running through all of this from the beginning, when Arthur Cox kicked Ammi Burke out of the office, blatantly breaking the law, and the WRC, you see the judges deferring to big law, deferring to Arthur Cox, doing what they're told. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. If Peter Ward says it, Marguerite Bolger will do it. And that is what happened here. And really at this point, we just say that every judge in this country and every barrister and every member of the legal profession should be very concerned about this kind of behaviour. It's rampant, it's happening everywhere in the courts, and it is destroying the rule of law in this country. And everyone should be concerned and should have a deep concern tonight about what is happening, not just in this case, but sadly in many other cases. And everything that happened here in this courtroom was on the DAR. And the DAR is the digital audio recording in every court case. It's fact, it's there, everything we're saying can be backed up. But it's not, I'll tell you where it's not. It's not in her judgment, Marguerite Bolger. She's not talking about this, she's covering it all up. And it's not in your paper, it's not in the newspaper, it's not on RTE. The journalists and the judges are working together to cover up what is happening in the courtroom, and that's why you're not hearing about this, and we're trying to remedy that
And just
tonight.
one other thing to mention, Josiah, after the judge changed her mind and said that she would take the cases back, and as Josiah, you said, Mr. Ward immediately blatantly defied that order. Mr. Ward then went on immediately to demand that the proceedings be terminated permanently. It was clear that the judge was of the mind maybe to adjourn the proceedings.
She had indicated that already.
She had indicated that before, but Mr. Ward stood to his feet and demanded that the case be terminated permanently. And in an extraordinarily short period of time, in a matter of minutes, the judge agreed to do that, and she terminated the proceedings. And that was the end of the case. No answer to the public interest questions that were raised. No looking by a high court at matters of extreme public importance in the area of unfair dismissal.
After this, the costs hearing came around after the case was dismissed on the instructions of Peter Ward, and the costs hearing came around. And at the costs hearing, another extraordinary revelation was made. It came to light. A private arrangement existed between Arthur Cox and the WRC, that a transcript, a private stenographer, their transcript would be shared with the judge without Ammi Burke's knowledge or consent. Now again, this is just a blatant breaking of all court rules and expectations. and basic principles of justice. And nothing was communicated to Ammi Burke about this arrangement, and the transcript was sent to the judge and the WRC. Now, when you when you realised that this was the case, you spoke up and stood up in court and addressed this, and Peter Ward then again stood to his feet, and he announced to the court that he had written to you about this transcript, made you aware of it. This was just a good old-fashioned lie. Nothing true in it whatsoever. You never received information about this or correspondence about this. Now, following this, the case was adjourned and came back at a later date, and you, in the intervening period, wrote to solicitors for Arthur Cox and requested this communication that they allegedly had told Ammi Burke about the transcript. Of course, they didn't give her anything. Nothing was provided because nothing exists. On the date that followed in court, you raised this with Judge Bolger, and when you raised this with her, I mean, I'll let you tell people what happened. It was
well, obviously it's a very serious matter when senior counsel would lie to the court, and I addressed the judge on this matter. And I furnished her with the paperwork proving that indeed senior counsel had lied, and that there was no correspondence between us in relation to this transcript. Ms Justice Bolger shot me down. I was not allowed to complete my submissions. She threatened me that she would terminate the hearing if I continued to speak, saying again, as she said many times before, sure, you can take it up with the Court of Appeal if you wish.
She also made the finding that Peter Ward did not lie. And I think at this point you would just stop and pause here and reflect on the state of our judiciary when the facts clearly show that this man lied to the court. He lied to everybody present. He didn't tell the truth. He said something existed which did not. And the judge, the person you go to, swore an oath before Almighty God to uphold justice in the land. The judge rises and says, I hereby announce that Peter Ward is telling the truth, that he didn't tell a lie. It's a sad day we've come to in our country, and it's really a time now to rise up, because that is not right, it's not acceptable, and there's no hope for justice for anybody, anywhere, if a judge is allowed to do that and get away with it. Now, moving on then, of course, as you said, you were taunted, go to the Court of Appeal, and that was the end of the case. We'd just like to say finally, I suppose, at the end, about the role of the media in all of this. Because really the media did not do their duty in this case. No. And I do believe that if Marguerite Bolger knew that the Irish Times was going to report what really happened in the courtroom, that she wouldn't be doing certain things. She wouldn't be saying lies or truth, that she wouldn't be trampling on the rule of law. But because she knows, sadly, it would appear now that certain people who call themselves journalists are not going to report the truth, she knows she can get away with it. Now, Ellen O'Riordan is a journalist with the Irish Times. She wrote an article last week about this Coss hearing, and for example, Ellen O'Riordan said that Ammi Burke said that lies had been told, but Ellen didn't tell anybody what the lies were. She left out all the details. She omits the details, and therefore all you're hearing is that Ammi Burke is unreasonable, that she's her conduct is unreasonable, that she's making wild allegations. And it's very sad, and it's not right, because the facts bear up exactly what Ammi Burke says about senior counsel Peter Ward. But Ellen O'Riordan, who has a duty as a journalist to bring the truth to the people, omits the facts, perverts the story, distorts the truth, so that you walk away from the paper with an entirely distorted account of what really happened. And what we have here is a situation where the public are paying their money, you're buying your paper, you expect to hear the truth, and you're not getting it. And instead of truth, you have the uplifting of Judge Bolger, the uplifting of the elites, the uplifting of big law, and of the you know, the deep pockets, and Arthur Cox in their big BMWs and Audis, who have lots of money and can afford to trample on the ordinary man, and the man in the street who doesn't have a penny to defend himself is trampled on, not just by the judges or by big law, but sadly today now by the Irish Times. He can't get a fair hearing. His good name is going to be dragged into the dust, and that's exactly what happened in your own case. And really,
Yes.
you know, we would just say it's totally unjust, in closing, to get a bill from Judge Marguerite Bolger and to be expected to pay now a massive sum of money after a whole cobbling together of lies, of abuse, of process. And we would say that Judge Bolger is a disgrace. Her behaviour is unacceptable, and the media are enabling that by not reporting on it. So we felt it important to make this video today. We do believe that the truth will win and prevail. Absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. Despite the Mickey Mouse journalists who call themselves journalists, sit in the courtroom and write a lot of lies really at the end of the day, despite that, and despite the money, and despite the power, the truth will prevail in the end. And that's why we made this video and encourage you to share it widely so that the truth can be known about Ammi Burke's case.